Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lords of Limited. My name is Ben Warney. Joining me on the line, as always, Mr. Ethan, overgrown zealot Sachs. Ethan, that's what I'm going to be when I'm clobbering you in our card discussions later in the episode.
Oh my God. But you just called me the overgrown zealot. How can we both
Well,
be?
maybe that's what you will be. Maybe it'll come to fisticuffs. Maybe we'll both be zealots for our grades.
Also, you are off your game this morning. You didn't This is not just another episode.
This is not just another episode. This is the Duskmourn Crash Course. Oh no, my signature line. It's gone. I told you. Things going well in my life right now.
That's why I feel like I have a fighting chance in the card disagreement department, because I feel like you're just a little, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning or something. You're just a little off your game.
Nah, I'll get it going here real soon. Don't you
I,
worry.
I trust. Yeah, we are crash coursing in a whole new way. We're turning the page, teaching these old dogs some new tricks, whatever, 7 years deep, and we're rethinking some things. We as we said, we reintroduced a new grading scale this time around. How was your experience using the grading scale for evaluating cards, Ben?
So, for those who are joining us for the Crash Course for the first time, what we're referring to is we have decided to use a numbering system, 0 through 4, for any cards that we would rate C plus or lower. So, cards that don't actively pull us into an archetype. And that the 1 through 4, or 0 through 4, I guess, would be based on the number of archetypes we expect them to be important to. So, if a card gets a 1, it's going to go in exactly one color pair. We expect, like maybe red black is where its home is going to be, or if it's a 4, it'll be in all 4 of that color's color pairs, like black green, black red, blue red, etc. I liked it, I think. And then what it made you do is be really clear about B minuses and above. So cards that pull you into a color still use the old limited resources grading scale, and that made me think more about how good I thought each of those cards were really. Like, it made me use some more Bs and B pluses rather than just give everything that pulled me into a color a B minus, which is what I think my default tendency is to do when I'm grading quickly. But the other thing that I really liked about it, and it took me longer, but it made me think more. It made me think more about what the colors want to do, because I had to constantly go back and reference the archetype rankings, like what the archetype was supposed to be. So I have a lot clearer picture in my head of what that is, and like how many of the red decks want to be controlling, or how many of the red decks want to be aggressive, or how many of the green decks care about the graveyard, or that sort of thing. It made me think bigger picture about the format a lot sooner than I normally would.
And I think that's where I want to lead us. And so, again, for folks who are joining us for the Crash Course for the first time, welcome. We will not be doing a full card by card grading set review, though we have graded all the commons and uncommons in a spreadsheet where you download the show. That'll be available to you to follow along if you so choose. But we also used to do a lot of big picture stuff and started off with, doing a lot of stats around creature sizing and removal and instances of archetype and mechanic support. And we're going to kind of chuck a lot of that out the window this time around. So for folks who have been with us for a long time, we welcome your feedback on if there's things you missed or things you would like us to see in the future. But one of the things that I'm really interested in doing now is I think about the things that you and I do the best as content creators, as podcasters, as teachers of limited magic. And I think that's like using our own experience. The show was sort of born out of like, we just play a ton and we're going to bring our experience playing a ton to bear. And we got a lot of great feedback on our Talented Build-A-Rounds episode. And I felt like that was just us being like, this is what we're discovering in the format. This is what we think you can do. And I want to bring a little bit more of that here to the Crash Course, because I think now in the wake of 17 lands, and there's, so many more pieces of content out there than there were 7 years ago when we started, that like, if people want that sort of stuff, I mean, even just you can mess around with Scryfall, searching for things in a certain way. If you want to know that stuff, that information is available to you elsewhere. And I think here I want to focus on us and what we bring to the podcast, what we bring in terms of our evaluations of what's going on in the format. So with that in mind, the sort of layout for things is we're going to really be framing stuff on those two color pairs. We're going to start by talking about the Signpost Uncommons and attempt to sort of rank them. That's been a clue for us in the past, certainly in the Play Booster era, of the color pairs that have like two banger signposts are often the top performing color pairs. So let's try and set ourselves up to have a loose idea of what those rankings are. And we'll discuss our grading differences for those cards as they come up. And then we're going to sort of talk about some archetype bleed, where certain color pairs might be splashing, individual other colors. We'll discuss any big picture thoughts, musings, questions about the format, then get into our grade differences, and then we'll be ranking our top 3 uncommons in each color and a list of top 10 commons to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, sweet. So let's do a little housekeeping and dive into this beast of an episode. First things first, the Patreon page. Patreon.com/Lords of Limited is where folks can go to give back to the show if they so choose. Got a lot of great perks over at the Patreon page. The base level that everybody currently gets access to is the Discord. The Lords of Limited Discord is hopping. It's popping. It's 24/7. Limited tech support. And this is a great time for it. We've got some practice drafts firing in the Discord. People are already just pouring over their individual tier lists, talking about rankings. We'll have early access this week for some streamers, courtesy of Magic Arena and Magic Online. And then everybody will be doing their pre-release. So folks will be sharing their sealed pools and success and early musings of cards. And then we'll be breaking the format wide open in the Discord next week when it drops for the general public online. A lot of great perks as you move up the reward tier rankings as well. And as I keep teasing, we are going to be having some sweet changes to the Patreon as well in the coming weeks. So be on the lookout for that. And we want to shout out our new patrons the first week that they joined. So this week we're welcoming Rob, Brock, Leland, Edward, David, and Searing Blaze. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, cannot say thank you enough. Those folks are getting in on the Patreon, the beginning of a new format. They know what's up, and you should be doing the same. It is a fantastic resource. When I'm, crunched on time during marching band season this time of year, I love popping my head in the Discord. Like when I've got 30 minutes, we've got some downtime, or 15 minutes while we've got some downtime here or there, and I just stay in touch with Magic when I don't get to play Magic as much as I would like.
The other thing that's great about the Discord is giving us a direct line to our most invested listeners, especially in like the wake of this, of like, we're trying out a new grading scale. What do people think? We're trying out some new stuff with the Crash Course. What do people think? And it's great to just have that direct pipeline to those folks. All right, so we're gonna hop over here to the multicolor tab of our grading spreadsheet, where we have a loose ranking of the archetypes in terms of the power level of the 2 Signpost Uncommons. And again, loose ranking, but we sort of had they're pretty clearly in general clumps based on our grades. We've got a lot of B's and above in these top 3 or 4 color pairs, and not so much in the bottom 6, so a pretty clear delineation if you're looking at that. And we'll get to some grading differences. Ben has some work to talk me up on some blue-black cards, perhaps. I don't think it's going to take much work, though. But top of the heap here, we have black-green. What's going on with black-green's uncommons?
So black-green is all about Delirium, and the first uncommon we have is Brood Spinner, which is green-black for a 2/3 spider. It's got reach. It says when Brood Spinner enters, surveil 2, and then you can pay 4 black-green, tap and sacrifice it to create a number of 1/1 black and green insect creature tokens with flying equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard.
And then it's got a clean little removal spell, Drag to the Roots, 2 black-green for an instant, destroy target non-land permanent, and it costs 2 less to cast if you have Delirium. So for each of those cards, we graded them the same. We gave Drag to the Roots a B and Brood Spinner a B+. I could honestly see Brood Spinner bumping up to A- territory for me. Like it just check. All the things you want out of a card, right? Like it's a juiced up little 2-drop, giving you that card selection, synergy, filling your graveyard for Delirium, and then like good on turn 2, good on turn 10 with being able to crack it and get a bunch of insects later in the game. Those are both banger cards, I think.
Yeah, I think Brood Spinner is certainly the more exciting of the two.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 6 mana ability is going to give you in limited probably 4, maybe 5 most of the time, right? Don't you think? But still
That's
very
a ton.
good.
That's a ton.
That's a ton. Yeah, I do like black green at the top of the power rankings. It and blue green, which is number 2, I think are going to be neck and neck. And largely on the back of Oblivious Bookworm looking insane. So moving on to blue green, which is all about Manifest Dread. The Signpost Uncommon is Oblivious Bookworm, blue green for a 2/3 human wizard. At the beginning of your end step, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card unless a permanent entered the battlefield face down under your control this turn, or you turn a permanent face up this turn.
Yeah, and then it also has Growing Dread, which is green-blue for an enchantment with flash. When it enters, you manifest Dread, and whenever you turn a permanent face up, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Oblivious Bookworm has my vote for best of this entire list. Like the best multicolor uncommon that we have in the set.
I think so, and that's reflected in our grading. Both you and I gave it An A minus.
And Growing Dread, we gave a 1 plus. Don't expect it to pull you into blue green, but expect it to excel in exactly blue green.
Yeah. So, and I think of this list for me, and I think you're maybe slightly different, but Brood Spinner, the 2/3 Spider, and Oblivious Bookworm, I think are the top two uncommons here, representing the top two archetypes.
Yes, I think that's true. I think like if other things were like we're gonna get to a card that I graded an A minus as well a little later on, but it's in an archetype I don't think is going to perform as well as black green and blue green. So perhaps that means I should just give Brood Spinner an A minus as well.
Well, and I think certainly the other thing that stood out to me, and we might as well chat about this now because I think it's going to come up, at least for me, as a recurring theme. Green looks busted in this format. Like, green looks
What else is
pushed.
new
It
in
looks pushed
2024?
again. Well,
Yeah,
but usually we're hating on green in the
I
Crash
know.
Course, right? And then people are
True.
like, "Wow, Lord's Element always says green sucks." And
Yeah.
green looks great, and usually we're low on green, and then it ends up being good, and we're high on green, and maybe it's going to end up being, who knows? If we think green's good in the Crash Course, it might be totally off the charts.
Yeah, I think green looks great. I think black looks great. The thing that has me less like blue, I think most of its commons, and we often talk about how commons don't matter. I think most of blue's commons seem like duds to me. Blue has a lot of banger uncommons in my mind. But one of the things I like about black green or black and green, and as a result, black green together, is that I think also a lot of its commons are just, stellar, like 4+ cards that you're just like, yeah, I'll happily play this in any black deck, any green deck.
Yes.
That takes us on to black white. We only had one of these cards previewed last week. This is the Reanimator deck. So we had Rite of the Moth, which was the Unburial Rites variant. It's 1 white, black, black for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. And it has flashback 3 white, white, black. We didn't have this other one previewed, though.
And it is sweet. This is Shroud Stomper. 3 white, white, black, black. Little Angel of Despair vibes going on. For a 5/5 uncommon elemental with Death Touch, whenever it enters or attacks, each opponent loses 2 life, you gain 2 life, and draw a card.
Yeah, so each of us graded both of these cards a B. Now, the question I have for you, and we have this now ranked 3rd in our archetype rankings, loosely, keep saying loosely, but are we being too optimistic about the Reanimator deck? Or do you think
No.
the support looks like it's real, right? Like if the support
juice is
wasn't
all there.
if the support wasn't there, we wouldn't be as high on these two cards, I think, because they're so clearly like you're not trying to cast Shroud Stomper. You're trying to get it in the bin and reanimate it with Rite of the Moth, reanimate it with, the white common reanimator, the black uncommon 1-drop that lets you zombify for 4 mana, like whatever. But the tools are there, it seems like.
Yeah, this format says the graveyard's going to be important, and the best mechanic, Manifest Dread, I keep wanting to call it Manifest Destiny, Manifest Dread, lets you bin cards into your graveyard pretty efficiently. We've seen seeded cards in white-black to help you discard things, and we've seen, more importantly, a reanimate at common in addition to commons. Like, so the support is there at common as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be until turn 5 typically, but putting Shroud Stomper into play on turn 5 is going to be excellent.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely oppressive.
Yes.
All right, we're going to get into a little bit of differences here, and I think our next two color pairs. First up, we have black-red. Sawblade Skin Ripper is 1 black-red for a 3/2 with Menace. Pay 2, sack another creature or enchantment, put a +1/+1 counter on Sawblade Skin Ripper, and at the beginning of your end step, if you sacked 1 or more permanents this turn, Sawblade Skin Ripper deals that much damage to any target. I just realized that Terramorphic Expanse is going to trigger this. That's awesome.
Oh my lord. That is gross. Okay, next up we have Disturbing Mirth, which is black-red for an enchantment. When it enters, you may sacrifice another enchantment or creature. If you do, draw 2 cards. And whenever you sacrifice Disturbing Mirth, manifest Dread. So we both gave Sawblade Skin Ripper a B. Maybe that's bumping up to B+ now that we know Terramorphic Expanse works with it. And Disturbing Mirth, you rated a 1+. So you think it's only going in black-red and being very good there. And I gave it a B-, where it actively pulls me into black-red.
And so, like, in under the old grading scale system, I would be essentially saying this is a C+.
And I would say essentially, it's a B-, and we wouldn't discuss it.
But I think it's worth discussing, even with like, oh, well, we don't have a gradation difference, or not 2 gradations difference or whatever here. But like, I am curious, like, this doesn't seem powerful enough to me for Disturbing Mirth, that is, to want to like pack one, pick one it and say, I want to do black red, just because I feel like I want to make sure I'm doing that. This more feels like I took black card, black card, black card, saw it third or fourth, and then I was like, okay, I'll do that. I can do that. That's what it more feels like to me.
Yes, but isn't that then pulling you into black red at that point? Like you started black and you're taking this and it's pulling you into black red. I agree that's the start that you'll have for it. But I think the other thing that I'm representing with saying B minus is that I think black red's good, and I think this card plays well with itself. Like there's we talk about diminishing returns. There's whatever the opposite of that.
Oh
There's
yeah,
exponential returns on the number of disturbing mirths that you get in your deck because it
for
plays so well
sure.
with itself. And I think black red's going to be a good archetype. So I think I want to try to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think disturbing mirth does all of those things for me. Like, yes, this card is a little finicky, but if you assume that black red is going to be good at doing the thing, which it looks like it's going to be good at doing the thing, you're going to have the support to turn this into a premium card. Like when this card works, it is premium.
I agree with that. Yeah, yeah. I think that there's just going to be a little growing pains for me in terms of like, is that like that still feels like I'm describing a 1+, but perhaps that is just a B minus. That is exactly what it is.
Well, and maybe it's like 1 plus 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 plus. Who knows? But like, I think we're saying similar things with different
Correct.
stuff, different
Yeah.
grades.
It seems like we probably are doing that with this next color pair, which is blue black, which means that 4 of the 5 top archetypes in this preliminary ranking have the color black in them.
Black's good.
Says something about not only do I think black is good, but I think like these signposts just seem much better than I think a lot of the other ones on this list.
Yes. So first up, we've got Skullcap Nuisance, which is blue-black for a 1/4 flying insect skeleton, and it's got Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, surveil 1.
And then there's Fear of Infinity, 1 blue-black for a 2/2 flying lifelink. It can't block, and it has Eerie whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, that's Eerie, so we don't need to read that again. You may return Fear of Infinity from your graveyard to your hand. I gave both of these a 1+. You gave Skull Snap Nuisance a B-, and Fear of Infinity a B.
Yeah, you talked me up on Fear of Infinity last week. I'm in for this kind of being Palace Siege or whatever that card was for the Drain 2, Gain 2. I was just trying to, when I gave those grades, especially the B to Fear of Infinity, what's it going to feel like when I play this on turn 3? And you're the opponent, or your opponent plays this on turn 3, and it's going to feel horrible, right? You're going to either have to use a removal spell on it, in which case it's going to come back and you're going to have to deal with it again.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have to let it hit you for 2, like Drain 2, Gain 2 every turn, and you just can't.
I mean, you
let
can't
that.
beat
It's
that.
impossible to race early in the game when it comes down on curve.
That feels like an easy change for me. Like I can definitely see Fear of Infinity as a B the way you're describing it.
And the other thing that this card is going to do that I think it's going to play well with a subset of cards we were talking before the show, which black has a couple cards that say if this creature was dealt damage, destroy it. Like, let's say your opponent does get a blocker down for this that has reach or has flying, it's bigger or whatever. You're going to be able to slap one of those black cards on there that make it, it's going to die if it runs into Fear of Infinity, and then you're going to run into the same thing where it's going to get looped around. I don't know. I really like that card. And then I think Skull Snap Nuisance just does everything that blue-black wants to do. If this was 1/3, I'd be like, I'm kind of out. 1/4 is
it's huge,
a large butt, and it's going to give you selection down the road, all that sort of stuff.
I think this is a great time to just point out one thing I did want to talk about with removal. We're not going to go through our whole list of, how creatures match up against certain removal in the set, but I do think 4 toughness is going to be the air quotes magic number. There's Scorching Dragonfire, which will almost certainly make both of our top commons lists. That's the 1 in a red. Deal 3 to something at instant speed, and if it dies, it exiles instead. And then black has a Nowhere to Run, which is an uncommon removal spell. It's a flash enchantment for 1 in a black. Give something -3/-3 until end of turn. I think being out of range of both of those is going to be important. Those are 2 of the, most of the kill spells these days just kill a thing outright or exile it or whatever, pacify it, tap it. Put it into your library, etc. So the damage-based or toughness-based stuff does seem to care about 3 or below. So you're right. If Skull Snap Nuisance was 1/3, I think it would be a lot worse. But this card's a house.
When I think similar to Disturbing Mirth, I think we're saying the same thing with different
Yeah.
things here. Like you're calling it, like I think I'm not first picking Skull Snap Nuisance and being like, yes, I'm doing it. But if I start out with my first 3 picks, black or blue, and then I see a Skull Snap Nuisance, you better believe it's pulling me into the other color.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably something for just you or I to figure out what we want to call that or what letter grade that gets, you know?
I think so. Yeah, that's fair. All right, that's going to take us to the bottom half of these rankings, which has one card that I think is sort of a diamond in the rough in Gremlin Tamers. This is blue-white for a 2/2, and it has Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, make a 1/1 red gremlin creature token.
Yeah, this card is nuts. You gave us an A-. I gave this a B+. This card is so efficient.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a card that I will happily first pick. I think, even though I'm not as excited about blue white, but as we'll get to, I think blue white actually splashes quite nicely, at least draws on multiple other colors in a nice way in terms of synergistically. So I think like Gremlin Tamer is awesome. And you see this on turn 2. Again, trying to do as best we can, picture what it's going to feel like when things get cast, when things hit the battlefield. Gremlin Tamer on turn 2 is going to be like, I have to kill that yesterday.
Yes. I mean, if your opponent untaps with it, they're getting free 1/1s, which is bad for you. And then they're just going to get a parade of free 1/1s subsequent turns, presumably if their deck is built well.
Yep, exactly. The other blue-white card we had last week is not as good. What's going on here?
This is Inquisitive Glimmer, white-blue for a 2/3 enchantment creature. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Unlock costs you pay cost 1 less.
I mean, it's not bad. We both gave it a 1+. Like, I think going to be excellent when you're doing the blue-white thing. I just don't think you want it. You're never first picking it, getting excited about this. But like the fact that this is like Mana Dork adjacent, like if you build your deck well, this is a Mana Dork. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a 2/3. It's a solid card.
For sure.
That takes us on to red-green, which is Beatdown Delirium. And we've got Beatdown in the name here. This is Beastie Beatdown. Red-green for a sorcery uncommon. Choose target creature you control and target creature an opponent controls. The creature you control deals damage equal to its power to the creature an opponent controls. If you have Delirium, you put 2+1/+1 counters on the creature you control before it deals the damage.
I had a really hard time grading this. I really, because I think one of the things that's really hard to not think about when I'm grading cards is like, where is this going to be on the 17 lands game and hand win rate rankings, you know? And I think Beastie Beatdown feels like it's gonna perform really well. Like, this card is crazy impactful. I just can't imagine taking it super highly. Like, it's not pulling me into red green, I feel like.
I mean, it could. It depends on how good red green is an archetype. If red green is one of the best archetypes and we're wrong about the grades of these cards, or maybe the premium cards aren't the gold cards. I mean, if Beastie Beatdown is in a good deck, it's going to be oppressive. I mean, it's going to be kill your thing, and it's like Savage Punch. It's like one of my favorite cards of all time, except
on steroids. Yeah. It's like, it's crazy. And I also like the other signpost, Wildfire Wickerfolk, red green for a 3/2 artifact creature with haste, and if you have Delirium, it gets +1/+1 and trample.
Yeah, I think green. I actually am a little higher on red green. I think maybe not necessarily these Signpost Uncommons, but certainly last week I was a little, is it bullish when things aren't going well in the stock market, or bearish? I don't remember.
You're asking the wrong person.
I was one of those two things. I think bull is when it's going well. Anyway, I was, whatever the thing is when you don't like the way the stocks are looking on red green Delirium Beatdown. Great analogy. Ethan's shaking his head at me in the YouTube.
I'm just thinking about how can I edit this out, but it's not going to happen.
I like red green's ability to get Delirium turned on pretty efficiently and quickly. Like, green is great at filling the graveyard.
Yes, for sure. The last real disagreement we're going to have is in this first green-white card. It's Baseball Bat, green-white for an artifact equipment. When it enters, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever equipped creature attacks, tap up to one target creature and has an equip cost of 3. I just gave this a 1. You gave this a B-. I'm not that crazy about this card. Talk me up.
I love some equipment. You know, I do.
Oh, is that it? Is this just I'm blinded by the equipment light?
I've got more, but I do like equipment. This turns all of your creatures into must-kill threats. And presumably the turn that you cast this, you're getting a survival trigger. So this is
Mm-hmm.
getting you that you didn't have before, probably.
Mm-hmm.
This is getting you damage, a survival trigger, maybe 2 if you tap another creature that has survival, if things are going great for you and your opponent's doing nothing. But presumably 1 survival trigger. Turns your creature into a must-kill threat. And then you move, like, this turns all of your creatures into territorial hammer skulls. And one of the things green-white's going to have problems with is its cards are pretty straightforward. And this gives green-white a place to dump its mana on turns like 6, 7, 8 while it's trying to close the game out. I think Baseball Bat is real. I think
Did
this
you
is going to
learn?
be scary.
Did you learn nothing from Mousetrapper? Your
This is
territorial hammer skull life.
this is territorial hammer skull
This
though.
is
Like,
literally territorial hammer skull. That's
this
true.
is a movable territorial hammer skull. This card is
I mean,
strong.
calling Equip 3 movable is generous.
Late in the game?
Yeah, which is interesting because, like, I think you and I thought, this is green-white survival. It's an ability that cares about attacking. This is an aggro deck, but apparently Morrow has called this like mid-range, like a late-game deck with
It
all the
does look
survival
that way to
stuff.
me. It looks like it's got some cutesy ways to compete into the late game. The other thing is you don't have to pay the 3, but your opponent has to respect that you might
That you
decide to equip
could.
this. Right. Like, this is a scary card. There are nails coming out of that baseball bat on the
That's
art.
true. That's true. I can't deny that the art has nails. You're kind of telling me, like, I can see the world where this is like a game warping card, and if you're not full on control, it kind of forces you to race the opponent who has this, and like you don't want to race the person who gets benefits from their creatures being tapped post combat.
Right. Well, and just imagine this is like not even a great card, but there's a green common that's a 4-mana 4/4 with survival. When it's tapped, you gain 2 life. Put
Uh-huh.
baseball bat on that. Swing with a 5/5. Tap one of their blockers. They probably can't double block it. You're gaining 2 life. They're taking
Yeah.
5 or chumping. Like, I just think this turns all of your random things into some oppressive threats that must be dealt with, which is very good for a deck that looks like it desperately wants some staying power to compete with all the late game engines that the other colors have.
You're at least talking me up to 1+. I don't know if I can get into the B- range, but you're at least talking me up to 1+. Let's talk about the other signposts, and then I want to talk about the other ways that there are in the format to tap creatures.
Sure. The next signpost is Shrewd Storyteller, 1 green-white for a 3/3 human survivor. At the beginning of your second main phase, if it's tapped, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it could be itself, could be something else.
Yeah. And I gave that a
Which
1,
is,
you gave it a
which
1+.
is excellent, right? Like, that is Luminarch Aspirant text.
Yeah, but it's Luminarch Aspirant enabled combat, right? And this
Yes.
doesn't quite do that. I mean, I guess it does for the next turn, but like I hear what you're saying.
Significantly worse than Luminarch Aspirant, for sure. But I think the juice is there. If green white's good, Shrewd Storyteller is going to be good.
Yes. So one of the things that I was curious about, and this is sort of our truncated version of like archetype mechanic support that we usually do, but I was curious about what are the ways without attacking or to like sneak through creatures to get them tapped, right? We don't have there's no vehicles in the format. You're not getting free crew, tap a thing, and then, you get your survival trigger.
Well, there's a rare vehicle.
Is there really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's green also.
Never mind. Okay. Well, that seems nuts. But what were the other ways in the format to mess around with getting your creatures through safely? What do we got on this list?
First up is Lionheart Glimmer. I don't think this one's very good. 3 white for a 2/5 uncommon with ward 2. Whenever you attack, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn.
Yeah, but a way to, it's not enabling. I mean, obviously, like combat tricks also sort of enable your survival stuff. That's another thing that is interesting about survival. Like, I think that tricks are going to be good in white green is because, your opponent has to block. It's sort of what we were talking about in the Norn conversation last week. Like, your opponent just sort of is priced into running into combat tricks when you have creatures with survival. Because a lot of, like, you talked about the one that gains 2, like that you might be able to ignore for a few turns, but a lot of them are giving you like cards worth of value if they survive to the second main phase.
Yes.
The big one is Orphans of the Wheat, 1 and a white for a 2/1 human. When it attacks, you tap any number of untapped creatures you control, and it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each tapped creature this way, or each creature tapped this way, rather. This is huge. I think this is like, because not only is white inherently gonna have survival creatures, so you can just play Orphans of the Wheat and some white survival creatures in any white deck, but in white green specifically, this is gonna be a house.
And then there's potentially some bleed into blue here that could be kind of cool. So we've got Enter the Enigma, single blue for a sorcery. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card.
Yeah, like that. I was like, I don't know what blue cares about on hit stuff, but white and green sure do. Like, that's pretty crazy. And then there's Clammy Prowler, which is 3 and a blue for a 2/5 enchantment horror. And whenever it attacks, another target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. So I don't know if there's some Bant survival stuff out there. There's also, white has a common that we might as well talk about here, which is Hardened Escort. 2 and white for a 2/4. When it attacks, another target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. So a very clear way to get a creature through. I had a hard time evaluating that card as well, but like definitely feels like it shines in white green. Beyond that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the one question I have for you, and I love that you're thinking about Bant survival already. Enter the Enigma and Clammy Prowler are pretty poopy cards on face value. You think potentially going out of your way to splash something like that in green white?
But like that, but already that, like, I feel like that's a boon. You're telling me I get a card that my deck actively wants, pick 13? The wheel is alive with Bant survival?
I'm gonna pump the brakes on that for our listeners.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. But that's where I'm cooking a little bit here. That's where I'm thinking. And then our last two archetypes, I don't think either of us are particularly excited about, at least the signposts. Number 9, we have red white. First up is Midnight Mayhem, 2 red white for a sorcery. You make 3 1/1 red gremlin creature tokens. Gremlins you control gain menace, lifelink, and haste until end of turn.
It's just not quite enough.
Like,
Like,
you're gonna gain 3, deal them 2, probably. And like, we should say that red white has a lot of stuff, as we'll get to with the next signpost, has a lot of stuff that cares about you having creatures with power 2 or less. And so potentially this is triggering those thrice in one shot. But I just don't know if that's enough.
yeah, there are a lot of them are on enter, right? Or are they just checks? I can't remember.
It depends. Some of them are checks. Like Arabella checks. Like Arabella is going to really care. Like these two play really nicely together.
So Arabella Abandoned Doll is red white for a 1/3 uncommon artifact creature, and whenever it attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 2 or less. But there's not a lot that trigger on creatures power 2 or less entering multiple times, right?
Correct. Yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah. So neither of us put these in the B range at all. And I think other than red green, this is the first one of those archetypes where that is true, where neither of us put one of these signposts in the B range.
And to be clear, I think red green's uncommons are both way better than red white's uncommons.
I agree.
Like
with that.
in the spirit of like not trying to lump all C pluses together. Like way more optimistic about red green than I am red white.
And then lastly, in the year of our Lord 2024, we do have blue red. Though I am interested in blue red rooms. I just am not really that interested in these signposts. Certainly not the new one that we hadn't seen. Intruding Soul Rager is blue red for a 2/2 spirit with vigilance. And you can tap it and sacrifice a room to have it deal 2 damage to each opponent and draw a card. Do you want to be sacrificing your rooms?
I mean, maybe there's 2 different types of bad blue red decks. I mean, so I think like it's not crazy. I was just thinking about this while you were reading that. Intruding Soul Rager is not that different from, I guess it is that different from Oblivious Bookworm. I was going to say, Oblivious Bookworm is the blue-green 2/3 that lets you loot every turn, even if you didn't do the thing. But like maybe there's a room deck that wants to fire them off, crack them for damage, like a more aggressive rooms deck. If you get a lot of the 2 and a red common room that deals 4 to something, you fire that off, you kill the thing. You sack it, dome them for 2, draw a card, chain them together. Yeah. Maybe there's more of a beatdowny room blue style red deck, or that uses like you can use the single blue room to bounce something, tap it, sack it, draw a card, burn 2. Like maybe Intruding Soul Rager works. I just think the Well, so we should say what the next one does, which is Smoky Lounge, Misty Salon. So Smoky Lounge is 2 and a red at the beginning of your first main phase. Add red, red. You can spend that only to cast room spells and unlock doors. And then Misty Salon obviously does not want you to sack rooms, which is where there's a bit of
No.
cognitive dissonance here. Misty
Right.
Salon is 3 and a blue. When you unlock this door, create an XX blue spirit creature token with flying, where X is the number of unlocked doors among rooms you control. So weird that the blue-red uncommons are asking you to do different things. That is like the only place where that is true among all 10 of these archetypes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the other ones that we've graded highly are just great cards. If the blue red cards are going to be great, it's going to be on the back of synergy, and you're going to have to do a lot of work to make them great. And if anybody's in your business, like competing for room stuff, certainly don't want to be aggressively going after rooms for cards of this power level intrinsically, I don't think.
Yeah, that's my feeling. There's a great shout that they seem to be antithetical to one another. They're doing different things, and like that's not the case of a lot of them. And when we look at the top, like sure, like black white is asking you to do something with the reanimator spell and the creature to reanimate, but they're asking you to do the same thing that the color pair is clearly doing. And like blue red rooms, but do you want the rooms in play or the rooms in your graveyard is a little different.
Yeah, and rooms to me, more than being a streamlined blue red deck, it looks more like a 4 or 5 color soup doing a lot of cool stuff type deck. It looks like many color room control that is base blue red
Well,
to
that's
me.
a great segue to the next thing that I wanted to take a look at, which is Archetype Bleed, because there is quite a bit of fixing, and that's something we often talk about is like what's the mana fixing in the set, but then we don't talk about what are you going to do with that mana fixing. And I do think we've got the unlucky dual lands that, like, if someone has 13 or less life, it comes into play untapped. We've got Terramorphic Expanse, as we talked about. Green has a whole host of ways to fix your mana. There's a land cycler in each of the colors, a big clunky 6 or 7 drop that you can cycle for 2 to find the basic land type of that color. So what do you do with that fixing? What archetype bleed do we expect to see? And so in the spirit of, thinking about Bant survival, I also tried to think about what colors are going to play nicely with each other. And I mean, this is more than, black green splashing a red bomb that's single pipped. This is like black green grabbing 4 or 5 synergistic red cards and putting them in a deck. What archetype bleed are we going to see in that sense? And we should say, like, you should always be trying to be just a 2-color deck. I think like those are the decks that have more success, but not every draft goes that smoothly, and not every draft affords you that. And sometimes there are other things that you want to have in your toolbox. And I think, like, if we are going to try and have a leg up on week 1, these are the things to look out for. So top of the heap again, another reason why I'm so high on black green is I feel like it gets synergy from all 3 other colors, right? There seems to be some black green, with the graveyard, delirium. White gives it some reanimator. Blue with manifest dread, playing with getting types into the bin for delirium. Red, obviously, because red green is also a delirium deck. I think Jund delirium is definitely going to be something you get into.
Yeah, black green and just green in general plays so well with so many of the other colors, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in terms of, I guess maybe not, because you're going to talk about some stuff where a lot of the other color pairs leave out green. But I
Mm-hmm.
think, to me, the big picture overarching thought I have about the format is that the graveyard matters for what I expect to be the best decks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think green is the best at doing graveyard things and also
Yes.
pulls all of the other colors around it into the graveyard stuff.
Right. Like, we'll get to talking about like black white. I feel like if you're thinking of black white doing the reanimator thing, and that's the other thing, is like I'm thinking about these color pairs doing their thing. What does another color add to it? Well, black white, I feel like green does add some stuff to helping you get some fatty boom booms in the yard, whatever. I'm not sure, even though red is in some ways a delirium color, I'm not sure how much red is going to add to that. I'm certainly not sure how much blue can add to that. So like black white, I feel like likely to splash in a synergistic way only 1 color.
Well, but similar to that, I think you're also going to have green black decks that are great because green black is great that can splash the good white cards. Like, and
Yes.
just be like green black Abzan Delirium Reanimator, or green black sultai, like you're manifesting destiny to fill your yard for delirium. Like
Mhm.
green black sultai and abzan just look like such powerful 3-color graveyard decks to me.
Well, and the part of that is like, you want to look at base green decks specifically in that sense because green gets fixing outside of the colorless fixing that the rest of the colors get.
Correct, right. Like I would expect it more commonly to be green black splash white than white black splash green, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
Like if the 3 colors are together.
I totally agree. So there is something though where green is left out of the other 4 colors, at least in my mind. Like blue white being eerie and caring about enchantments. I think it can draw on some black, right? Black is also playing in the eerie space. Red, because of rooms, is playing in the eerie space. I don't think green is adding much to a blue white deck in that sense. Blue black, similarly, eerie. Bring on the red, bring on the white. Don't know about green. Blue red rooms, bring on the white Eerie and the black Eerie stuff. I don't think green is adding much there. So I think there is something in the Eerie enchantment room space that green gets left out of, as far as I can tell. But I think as base green decks, you're going to get to do what you were saying, which is splashing not only synergistic stuff, but just splashing good removal, good on rate cards, etc.
Yeah, so I think maybe it feels like the format and how the colors bleed is that green gets to do everything with a graveyard, and then
Mm-hmm.
the other colors you're going to be able to splash anything from any of the other colors that cares about the graveyard. I think primarily blue and white, although green too with the delirium stompy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you care about enchantments, you don't care about green as much.
That's what I think. Yeah, I was sort of thinking, we had those little graphics of for Modern Horizons 3 about like what 3 colors were playing in the energy space and what colors were playing over here in the Eldrazi space. And I was trying to think about the colors here because it does seem like, much more than Bloomborough, we're going to have a lot of archetype bleed. And I think having an eye towards, okay, if I am able to splash, what am I going to want to splash? And I think the other color pairs maybe draw on one a little bit better. I talked about green white splashing blue well for survival stuff, maybe black white splashing green, etc. And red white I think is the only one on this list that I have that I don't think, like, red white as an aggro deck I don't think wants to splash, and I also don't think black green or blue are particularly enhancing red white's sort of power 2 or less creature thing that it seems to be doing.
I don't think a red white is enhancing a red white's power 2 or less thing that it's doing.
Savage.
It just doesn't look great to me. Like it's a lot of 4-mana 2/4s running around, like in what presumably wants to be an aggro deck, and it gets none of the cool mechanics
Are
in
you
the
talking about
format.
Casper? You don't like the 4 mana 2/4? We're gonna argue about that, I think, and I'm wrong, but whatever. I had a couple big picture thoughts that I wanted about Duskmourn that were creeping up for me as I was grading cards and looking at the spoiler. I think, and this might just be we talked about this being true for Bloomborough a little bit, and this might just be canon now for limited. I don't think you can keep hands without a turn 2 play on the draw with 2 drops in the format that have survival. Like, you cannot afford, your opponent plays the 1 and a green 2/2 that, like, if it survives you get to find a land. Like, you can't let that happen. I don't think you can let that
Yeah.
happen.
I agree with that sentiment, but that's similar to what was the speed of Innistrad? Like, I mean, it had like this format looks kind of Innistrad to me. It had the travel prep deck that was green white.
Uh-huh.
It had werewolves that
Uh-huh.
incentivized you to not miss plays, but I don't remember feeling like every deck in that format was crazy fast, or but you did kind of have to get on board because of werewolves. But the
It's
green
not
white looks like such a clear parallel to me to being a beatdown deck between those two formats, like the boogeyman beatdown deck of the format, and then everything else was doing some cool graveyard stuff.
well, but it's I feel like in the similar sense of the travel prep deck from Innistrad, which we're just so dating ourselves about, but that, like, the it's so snowbally. I don't necessarily mean aggro from the survival standpoint, but I do mean it does, like, the survival stuff is very snowbally. Delirium is quite snowbally. Like, if you get to do the thing and turn that on, you're gonna then you're up a tier, right? You're doing the thing for your deck. If you get to start turning on your engine-y looking things first, I think it's really hard to combat that. I think if you're like, oh, but I'm doing my thing, but you are doing it a turn or two behind, like, I think you're just out.
Yeah, that's fair. Sign me up for that thought that you can't keep
Okay.
hands without a turn 2 play on the draw.
I just think that's worth, like, I think you, again, I don't think that means the format's necessarily going to be fast or whatever. And we did actually, I don't know if you saw this, we got some good data feedback that, like, the speed of the format stuff that people talk about is, like, pretty flawed, I think, in terms of, like, what they're drawing on from the data. And so
You don't have to tell me that. I'm repping my mad sweatshirt today.
that I think our experiences of Bloomburrow not feeling super fast were perhaps not as crazy as they might appear at first blush. Removal creature sizing, we already sort of talked about the, like, feel like the magic number is 4-ish. Then we've got the general same distribution of 1 toughness creatures being about a fifth of the creatures, etc. I'm back to the question of Pyroclasm. 1 in a red, sorcery, deal 2 to everything, with a ton of 2 toughness creatures, a ton of things that say manifest red. Again, this is just going in red control decks. That's it, you think?
I think this is only going in blue-red rooms, or like room control or whatever, because you're never playing this in Delirium Beatdown.
No.
You're never playing this in red-black Sacrifice.
You're never
not
playing it
gonna
in
play
red-white.
Two toughness less, because it's going to kill all your stuff. It's like blue-red or red control, like a green, soupy room. I think this is room control. I think it's going to be excellent in room control. But otherwise.
Which is another awkward thing, that it kills the Signpost. The 2/2 vigilance in Sax Rooms. That card stinks, I think.
Well, but of those, if you're the Rims deck, the other one, the Smoky Salon and the Misty Lounge or whatever, are going to be much,
a Pyroclasm.
Yeah.
Shall we get to the grading scale and the card differences?
Please, let's do.
Okay, so an attempt to, again, hammer home what this new grading scale is. We do have our A's at the top of the heap. These are bombs, game winners, good in many situations, especially when behind. Best cards in the set: bomb rares and hyper efficient spells. Cards like Valley Quest Caller, Season of Loss, and Hunter's Talent.
B's are strong cards that pull you into color, make you want to play that color, reasons to be in a particular color or combination of colors, the best commons, and some good uncommons. Cards like Saver, Shoreline, Looter, and Vine Reap Mentor.
4s. This is our new scale. 4s,
or sometimes,
or sometimes 10 if colorless. That's a little clunky.
Colorless is horrible. This does not work on colorless.
That does fall apart a little bit when you get to colorless. But these are cards that you want to play in any deck that can cast it. And a distinction there of cards, it's not pulling you in to that deck, but when you're in that deck, you're playing it. When you're in that color, you're playing it. Cards like Baker's Bane Duo, Head of the Household, and Take Out the Trash.
What if artifacts are just like binary, 1s or 0s? Like they either matter or they don't, or they're like a yes or a no.
I'm fine with that.
This broke down very hard when I got to the artifacts page.
It definitely did. I started to give something a 4. I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense.
2s or 3s are cards that don't go in every deck or only have synergies in certain archetypes. So think stuff like Coruscation Mage, Huskbuster Swarm, or Sonar Strike.
A 1 is a card that only belongs in one kind of deck, whether that's a specific color pair or just a general strategy, control, aggro, its own kind of build around, etc. Cards like Eddie Merc Crab, Builder's Talent, Life Creed Duo.
And 0s are either cards that are unplayable, but more likely than that, 0s are cards that just don't really have a home or don't have a significant impact on the game. If it's a card you don't miss having at the end of a draft, even in a deck you think it goes in, it's a 0. So something like Skyskipper Duo, fine magic card, just like didn't matter for the Frogs deck. Early Winter, fine removal spell, you could play it, maybe it did have a significant impact on the game if you drew it, but it's just so clunky at 5 mana that it was not important to any archetype. Or something like Rush Shield Rampager.
All right, let's get into it here. Excited to give this a spin. First up, we're going to talk about the aforementioned 2/4, the Friendly Ghost. 3 and a white for a 2/4 flyer. When it enters, target creature gets +2/+4 until end of turn. I gave this a 4. You gave this a 2. And we should say, for folks who are following the spreadsheet along at home, We're mostly just going to talk about the one, basically like the big differences. If someone gave it a B or above, or B minus or above, and someone didn't, we'll talk about it. And if it's like a 0 or a 4 or a 1 or a 4 type of thing, it feels like worth talking about. So a 4 and a 2 is a little cuspy, but I did want to chat about it. Like, I mostly because I had a hard time grading this. I was like, this could be a 0. This could just not matter. But it also, like, it pushes a chunk of damage.
So I would push back that this goes in all 4 archetypes. I think if this is good, it will be good in red-white, presumably, because it's going to trigger your stuff and push damage. Green-white, it's certainly going to enable some survivor attacks.
Aha.
Past that, like, you don't want it in blue-white. You don't
You
want a
definitely
4-drop that's not an enchantment in blue-white.
right.
And in white-black, you don't care about it at all. Like, it definitely is, at max, a 2.
2. It might be a 0, but
If anything, and it might be a 0. I think it's
Yeah.
either a 0 or a 2.
Sold. 2 sounds great to me. I'm in for that.
And like, question mark, like, I think it's a good card to talk about, because like, I agree with you, the potential is there. Like, if pushing damage for green white, like, it's going to be oppressive, I guess. Like, if this is your turn 4 play and you enable a survival attack, it's kind of tree guard duo-ish.
Yeah, right.
In that sense, except I wish it gave flying. Maybe that's just being greedy.
Seems a
Always
little
giving
greedy.
+2/+4 is always enabling an attack, I guess.
Yeah.
I kind of like it in green white and red white. I don't know how. My curiosity's peaked about how good it's going to be in those archetypes.
I think you're right. 2 sounds great. I also I'm not that, it's not that I'm high on this card, but I just like, we'll talk about it. What's the next one?
Next up is Seized from Slumber. This is 4 and a white for an instant common. This spell costs 3 less to cast if it targets a tapped creature. Destroy target creature. You gave us a 4, and I gave us a 1.
I was honestly between 4 and 0, but it felt too harsh to give this a 0.
Here are my thoughts. Like, just going through, this is what the number system forces you to do, which is why I do kind of actually like it. Like, and again, not trying to convert the limited community at large to this, like, but I think it does foster better discussion for you and I, which is better for our podcast listeners.
Yes.
So if you look at the white color pairs, green white beatdown does not want this card.
Yes.
Red white beatdown does not want this card. Blue white tempo, presumably like tempo eerie as its build, probably doesn't want this card. But white black, you better believe white black just wants to stay alive until it can reanimate some stuff. White black looks like a defensive deck, so this card's a little out of place in that white, most of its decks want to be proactive, I think. But black white, I think, as a reactive deck, getting to pick this up late as a premium removal spell when you're going to be, needing to spend high picks on great cards to reanimate, the reanimate spells, but you're still going to want some removal. I think this is going to be the removal spell of choice for white-black decks.
Yeah, I'm in for that. I like it as a 1. That was more like I said, I wanted to give it a 0, but I was like, that feels too harsh. But I didn't do the next step of being like, what really, where does this really have a home? I do love this next card. Sheltered by Ghosts is an uncommon 1 and a white aura, enchant creature you control. When it enters, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghosts leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has lifelink and ward 2. I gave this a B+, you gave this a 2+. I could honestly give this an A-. I think. This card is broken.
No, we need to talk about this card. Like, this is the first time we're going to argue, because you're saying you could push up to A-. I could push down to 0, I think, with this card, potentially.
This, again, if I've got the 17 lands in the back of my head, it is hard. Like, this feels like top 10. If we're trying to think about what are the uncommons that really matter, I think this hits the battlefield. This is going to win so many games it gets cast in. Like, if you don't have a removal spell for this, for the thing, this game is over. The game is over.
Is this that good?
This seems so good for me.
But I want something that pumps toughness. Like, and there's like the awkward tension of, are you putting this on your biggest powered thing to like presumably get in a big lifelink hit? Are you
You're
putting it
you're
on
a good
your?
you're a good Magic player. You'll figure out what to do in the situation when you cast it, whether
But
it's right to.
this is kind of like a 2 mana bone splinters sometime too, where you're gonna put it on your worst thing and it's never gonna attack again.
I don't understand how flexibility for this card is a bad thing.
Is this really good? I don't know.
Maybe I'm way off base here, but this card seems I would bet money this is like a top 10 uncommon.
Really? I'm that
Seems,
off on it. I mean,
maybe I'm crazy.
I see the high end too, but I also think there's like I think this card has a really wide range.
Yes.
A
But like
really wide range.
think about like I just feel I'm trying again, maybe I'm taking a lot of my misses, the lessons from my misses in Bloomborough too much to heart. But I'm thinking about like I kept trying to like see all the bad things about Scales of Shale. Like, oh, it's a trick and you can get blown out and the 3 mana and blah blah blah. And just like that card was like just crazy impactful. And this is like Scales of Shale, but better. And I know it doesn't save your creature, but it kills their best creature. And now your creature has lifelink. That's
Yeah, so let's put it on the archetypes, right? White black presumably doesn't want this card much. Would you agree with that?
I just think that thinking about archetypes isn't, I think it's very helpful in the framework of like cards that aren't as powerful as this. But a card as powerful as this, I don't think you're that picky. You're gonna need removal and you're gonna have creatures in your black white deck. And this does both of those things, or this plays like it plays with the creatures you have because you want to have a creature to put it on, and it exiles their best thing. Like that's a card you want no matter what your color pair or strategy is.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be nuts in blue white. I think it's gonna be nuts in green white. Red white, I just think sucks, but maybe this will push red white. This is a powerful card. You're right. I was crazy saying I could push it down to 0. This is a powerful card, but I think the thing I'm worried about is when you cast it, it's going to be such a big swing in your favor. But when your opponent kills the thing, it's going to be such a big swing in their favor. But I guess you've already gotten in a lifelink hit at that point. But you're going to get two. I don't know. This is a hard card for me to evaluate.
Okay, that's good. I feel like we're getting to the meat of we're not arguing about D's versus C minuses. We're arguing about like this is a card that one of us at least thinks is going to have a big impact on the format.
I just am kind of down on. It's hard for me to imagine picking this at B plus also, because I just want to play with green and black graveyard stuff. Like, I think those are the best archetypes in Manifest Destiny. Like, I think this is going to be a good card in the
Manifest
archetypes.
Dread, Thomas Jefferson.
No. Dollar in the swear jar. It's going to happen so much this format.
That's the teacher coming out talking about Manifest Destiny. All right, let's we'll table the discussion for now. I feel like we got as much out of that as we need to. This next card I'm definitely wrong about, but I want to talk about it. Split Skin Doll. What's going on here?
This is 1 and a white for 2/1. When it enters, draw a card. Then you discard a card unless you control another creature with power 2 or less. You gave us a B plus. I gave us a 1+.
And the 1+ presumably is
red white.
Doesn't black white love this as a discard outlet?
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so maybe it's a 2+.
I just think then like it's also it's just I don't know. It's types. I feel like the fact that it's 2 types, and I know white doesn't care about delirium, but green, black, and red do, and maybe you've got some stuff like, and I don't know, 2 mana 2/1 loot on turn 2 isn't great, but it's not bad. And then
think about the stupid blue frog that did that though. That card was garbage.
Yeah, but context matters, buddy. Like, and this might be better. And Bellowing Crier didn't say, but if you have Pond Profit, this is also Pond Profit, which is what this says.
Yeah. But do you like then you're playing off curve all of a sudden? Like presumably
You've
like
never played a 2-drop past turn 2?
No.
In your life?
Never in my life.
I mean, I gave this a B+, which is insanely high. That's way too high. This is probably more, but like
it's probably more like a 4.
It's a 4.
And like better than that in black white or red white potentially.
Yeah. Which feels like that might be a B-. Like, it feels like that might be. I don't know. Feels like it might be a B- to me. I'm going down to B-.
I'll come up to 4,
Okay.
I guess.
Great. We'll call it a win. Savor of the Small is next. 3 and a white for a 3/4 uncommon. And it has survival. Return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to your hand. I gave this a B minus. You gave this a 2. You're just playing this in any white deck, right? Like, this is just a good card.
Is it?
How can it not be?
You have to have a thing in your graveyard, which presumably if you're doing well, you don't have things in the graveyard. I mean, if you're a green-white beatdown deck, I don't want to hope to have things in my graveyard. This has to have survived combat. It's only 3 power, 4 toughness. It's a bad hill giant on 4 mana. Yes, if this does the thing, you get a bit of value in a deck that presumably does not care about getting value.
I'm just laughing because all it took was us to change to the number scale for me to be the optimist. That's all it took. And now you're the one talking. Like, you're just saying like things that I'm like, yeah, that's it. You're like, oh, it's just a 3/4. I'm like, that seems good. It
No.
has to have survived. Yeah, seems good. I don't know. This seems like this hits the battlefield. The game changes.
No.
I think so.
This is an infinitely worse Scroll Thief. This is a horribly statted, horribly costed Scroll Thief that has other setup cost requirements, and you may not even want to take your mana value 3 or less card out of your graveyard because you might care about Delirium or who knows.
I mean, I can only chuckle and say I would like. I'm going to put a big pin in this card, and I want to come back to this in 2 weeks.
Okay, love it.
And see what's going on.
Love it.
Talk to me about this first blue common.
Whew, yeah, this is maybe our biggest difference. So this is Unable to Scream, blue for an aura, enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a toy artifact creature with base power and toughness 0/2 in addition to its other types. As long as an enchanted creature is face down, it can't be turned face up. You gave us a 0. A 0!
Yeah.
And I gave us a B minus. This card is incredible in a deck that wants the game to go long. It's swords to plowshares, like no Kappa swords to plowshares at sorcery speed.
Wow. Okay.
Like it has the thing that we always want the blue things to have, which is they lose all abilities. It's a 0/2. Like it gets the thing dead if you don't care about attacking on the ground, which the blue decks I don't think want to do much. The Rooms deck is going to love this card. Blue-black control.
Loves this.
Blue-black loves this card. Blue-white kind of likes it because it's an enchantment. It's a synergistic removal spell for the blue-white deck that's going to trigger all your Eerie stuff. And blue-green, like, maybe it's at its worst there, but blue-green's already amazing. Might play this as a copy. Maybe it's going to get the green fight spells. But the other 3 blue decks, this card is...
Yeah.
It's nuts in, I think.
All right. B minus?
Sold? B minus? From 0 to B minus? Did we do it?
I'll go 3. I'll go 3 plus.
You go 3 plus.
Yeah, that's the best you got for me. I don't know. It's the lose all abilities is good, but that's Casmina's Transmutation does that too. I feel like you got this time is kind of what I want to say. Like usually I get got by this, but
no, because it's not because it's not a 1/1. Like it's got no power to attack you with.
Yeah,
I maybe I got, but if I got, I'll whatever. I love this card. I am going to be screaming about this card.
You will be unable to not scream about. I will be unable to not scream.
I really like this card. I don't even think this is me trying to make a hot take. I legitimately think this card is going to be excellent in every blue deck that's not blue green.
Okay, you were selling me. You're selling me in this moment. I don't think you can sell me on this next card. Vanish from Sight. It's 3 and a blue for an instant. Target non-land permanent's owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. Surveil 1. I gave this a 0. You gave this a 4. I don't think this card will matter. Too expensive. There's no cost reduction possible on this. I think is kind of a death knell for me.
I hear that. I think the one bump I gave to the card is in decks that care about Delirium, so maybe it's not a 4 then. It's going to give you an instant in the yard, so maybe turn on Delirium at instant speed if that's relevant, plus the Surveil 1 to maybe get 2 types into the yard with 1 card, which could be valuable. So maybe this is blue-green only, because I agree, like blue-white doesn't really care. It's going to be a little expensive and clunky in blue-black. And blue-red, again, probably a little expensive, clunky. So maybe it is only blue-green, but maybe
I
it's got a
guess
home there. Because
I
you are
guess
going to want a wide variety of types in blue-green.
that's true. There's also something cute you can do with this in response to your opponent manifesting dread. That then they have to choose, like, does this go to my bin or do I make it a 2/2 and then I have to flip it up later? So like
Ooh, cute.
you kind of, I don't know, but I'm not that. That seems more cute than good. Yeah, I'm pretty out on Vanish from Sight currently.
I think you've talked me down on it. I'll move from 4 down to 1.
Moving on to the uncommons. First up is Ghostly Keybearer, 3 and a blue for a 3/3 flyer. When it deals combat damage to a player, unlock a locked door of up to one target room you control. I gave this a B, you gave this a 1+. I think we're very similar here. I just like, and maybe with how potentially bad we think the rooms deck is, this won't be true. But if the rooms deck can be good, I do think I'm like, oh, because I think there's a rooms deck, there's blue red rooms or whatever, blue red X, blue red soup rooms. But blue white will have rooms. Like decks will have rooms, and like getting to unlock a door that, and we haven't even talked about any rooms that are at rare or mythic. Getting to unlock a door for free is incredible on a lot of these.
I just think this body's too terrible. It doesn't have the magic number. If this were a 2/4 flyer or a 3/4 flyer or something, like, this is going to get owned by Scorching Dragonfire and the other trap thing, the -3/-3 thing.
That's such an annoying point. That is
the
true.
Phantom Monster 4-mana flyer that has to connect is just not a good Magic card.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, I'll go down to 1+.
Next up, we've got Duskmourn's Domination. 4 blue for an uncommon control magic variant. This says enchant creature, you control enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets -3/-0 and loses all abilities. You gave us a 4, I gave us a 0. They finally did it. They made a control magic that I am not interested in.
So I had I wanted to talk about this regardless because I had a really hard time grading this. I even went to the Lord's Limit Discord. I was like, is there something like flavor related why this card is like a nerfed in Bolus's clutches? Like, why did they think we didn't deserve 6 mana control magic, which is already expensive for the effect? But Ben, you yourself, as a lover of 6 mana Flametongue Kavus, how do you not love a 6 mana Flametongue Kavu? Like, I agree it's not. I think, here's why I want to talk about it, is I think the impulse is to look at this and say, this is nerfed in Bolus's clutches. This card is terrible. And I think nerfed in Bolus's clutches is still probably fine.
What are you going to get? You're going to get like
anything I want.
04, a 1/4.
Would you not play? I mean, I know, again, whatever, you can blow up enchantment, so it's not like this, but like, would you play a 6 mana 1/4, kill whatever, exile whatever you want from them
until it comes back into play?
Again, I'm not saying it's a B, but it's hard. It's a hard sell to tell me you're cutting this from blue decks.
I want to hate this card so much.
I know. I think you are speaking for so many people right now who see that, who are just like, this is terrible. But I don't.
It is terrible.
It's not. Don't let good be the enemy of great. You know, like, it's not like, yeah, it's not great, but that doesn't mean it's bad.
You're probably right. All right, whatever. 4, sure.
Got him.
All right, moving on to black. First up, we've got Cracked Skull. This is 2 and a black for an enchantment aura, enchant creature. When this enters, look at the target player's hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. When an enchant creature is dealt damage, destroy it. You give us a 0. I give us a 4. I really like this card, especially in blue-black Eerie. Like, it's going to be hand disruption. That's also going to be synergistic. And I think that when the enchanted creature's dealt damage, destroy it, that text is relevant. Like, are there ways to reach out and deal the damage? Not a ton.
Not really.
But presumably in black, you're going to be, I think every black deck's going to want the 1/1 that when it dies, it deals the damage to something. So you're probably going to be playing that card, which is a way to interact with this. But also there's the black card that dies into Manifest Destiny, I think, is a 1/1 that dies into Manifest Destiny. Manifest Dread. Oh my god, it's so bad. I did it twice.
Yeah.
I'm going to be broke by the end of Duskmourn. Pizza party for all of our listeners at my house. But I think there's that card too. Like this is going to make your opponent's life awkward as far as attacks, which is presumably what you want. It's going to be hard for them to attack into you with a good threat. This nerfs your opponent's best threat pretty significantly.
Does?
I think so.
It's just
It makes
bone
any
splinters at that point.
that took a card out of their hand.
Right, so it's a 2 for 2. It's not broken.
I don't think it's broken. I just think it's a good card.
I just don't think that. I don't.
I can't imagine cutting it from black decks. I think it's a 4 because your black green's going to want enchantments.
That's
to put
true.
enchantments in the graveyard, it's going to get an enchantment in the graveyard. Black white, you can discard your own stuff. You can put it on a creature, target yourself, put something into the bin. No, that's real.
No, that is real. You're right. I mean,
Blue black, it's eerie. Black red, it leaves an enchantment around for you to sacrifice. This goes in all the black decks.
Yeah. I don't think well. Like, I'm not saying, like, I can see putting this in decks. I don't think it's unplayable, but I don't think I'm gonna be like, wish I had a cracked skull at the end of a draft.
I think this is much closer to the, like, I forget the name of it, but the one that left a 1/1 around.
Toll of the Invasion, yeah.
This is much closer to Toll of the Invasion than it is something like Mind Rot or something like that. I think this is a real card.
I would not be surprised if you were right. I feel like you're selling me on it, but on principle, I'm just gonna stay at 0.
I love it.
This next one we both have the same grade for, but I want to talk about it because it kind of stumped me. Let's Play a Game is 3 and a black for a sorcery. It is Delirium. You choose one, but if you have Delirium, you get to choose one or more of these options instead. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn. Each opponent discards 2 cards. Each opponent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. So we both gave this a 0. Did this card give you pause at all?
Yes, it was very hard for me to evaluate. I spent quite a bit of time, but ultimately the conclusion I came to was this is at its best in black-green, right? And I just don't care if I have a copy in black-green. Like, you're never picking it highly because you're always going to be picking just great cards, and then you're going to be picking Delirium Enablers, and then if you happen to need a 23rd card or whatever, you're going to get a Let's Play a Game, and you can put it in your deck if you want to. I just don't think this is a desirable thing to try to set up and enable.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, is this like one of the things I was trying to think of is like, is this Ral in the Implicit Maze? I'm missing like that you're getting like 3 great tastes that taste great together. I ultimately decided no was the answer, but this is a card that like if it plays well, I don't think I'll be surprised.
I agree, but it's only going to be in black green then. So at most it's a 1. Maybe blue black.
I don't know. I feel like I feel like you can get Delirium in all the black decks if you want.
This is cleaning up glimmers.
It's cleaning up glimmers.
There's
finishing
some
stuff
X1s
off.
running around. Maybe. I do agree the card's got potential. It was very hard to evaluate.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I want to talk about it, just because I know we both on paper it looks like we both wrote it off, but I think we definitely did not in terms of trying to figure it out.
All right, next we've got Defiled Crypt and Cadaver Lab. So this is 2 rooms. They're uncommons. Defiled Crypt says 3 and a black enchantment. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 black horror enchantment creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn. And Cadaver Lab is black for an enchantment. When you unlock this door, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand.
Yeah, I gave this a B. You gave this a 1+. Presumably the 1 being black-green.
I was thinking Reanimator, I think I was thinking black-white. Maybe it's a 2+.
I think this is just going to be great in any black deck. Like, I think black's got so much inherent synergies. Like, I don't know.
How are cards leaving your graveyard, though? Like in black-red or blue-black? I guess the blue-black uncommon. Ooh, that's spicy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like this was not one that I was like, let me do a search for how many ways there are. But, like, it's a format where the graveyard matters a ton. And this is,
and there's that black common also that can exile itself from the graveyard.
Like it's a 5-mana this card in and of itself is a 5-mana Gravedigger that you pay
Which
for.
Is not good in 2024.
It's not good in 2024. You pay for in installments, but like with significant upside and flexibility.
Yeah, I'm sold. All right, B-.
Okay,
Cool card.
Moving on to red, we've got Grab the Prize. 1 and a red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Draw 2 cards. If the discarded card wasn't a land, Grab the Prize deals 2 damage to each opponent. I gave this a 4. You gave this a 0. Maybe it's more like a 3. Maybe red-white doesn't care about it, but like...
Red-white doesn't. Red-black doesn't.
Sure it does.
Why does red-black care about this card?
Because it's Tormenting Voice. You're telling me you're red... You're telling me your red-black deck...
argument of all time. I'm not accepting that in debate club.
You're telling me your red-black deck, where red-green and black-green, so both red cards and black cards, care about Delirium. You're telling me your red-black deck is going to have no Delirium cards in it?
There's not a lot of red cards that care about Delirium.
I mean, this is definitely excellent in red-green Delirium.
It's Delirium Stompy.
Stop saying Stompy. I feel like this card's in a set where the graveyard matters. It's hard for me to think that this card isn't going to be good.
And maybe you're like Mardu Reanimator or something.
Oh yeah, now we're talking.
Grab the prize.
All right, I'll go 2 on Grab the Prize, down from 4, but I feel like 2
It's
plus.
hard for me to imagine. It's hard for me to imagine picking it highly, so maybe I'm giving it a 0 on when I expect to pick it. Will I play Grab the Prize some? Probably.
Yeah, but that's a 0. Like what you're describing there is a 0.
Yeah,
and I feel like that might be true. That might be true. I'm gonna go down to 2.
That takes us on to the uncommons, where we've got Piggy Bank. This is 1 and a red for a 3/2 uncommon. Whenever it dies, create a treasure token. You give us a B plus. I gave us a 4 plus.
You skipped over the best line of text, which is artifact creature.
It's an artifact creature, sure. Yeah, I'm with you. B plus is this pig is not fat enough to get a B plus.
This card rules. 2 mana 3/2. 2 types dies into a treasure. This card rules.
Rules, huh?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to imagine ever cutting it. It's not going to have a B plus sized impact on the games. It's just a little bit of efficient value. It's going to trade with your opponent's 2-drop and leave you with a treasure.
You can't just read the text. Here's how I'm going to read. My line reading would be, it's going to trade with your opponent's 2-drop and leave you a treasure.
You got the gig. Hired, sold.
So yeah, I mean, like there's not much to discuss here because like the card is what it is, and like I obviously am excited about that. I think that is going to be impactful.
I think this looks like a red-green card.
2 types in the bin, plus ramp you for a spell that's going to matter. That seems awesome. And then you're not even talking about the times where like, does this chunk in for 6 before your opponent decides they want to trade with it? You act like everybody has a 2-drop. They're thrilled to trade with this. What happens when you have a trick and you're pushing damage? Like whatever. Like this card
you're pack one, pick one in this card.
I think so. I mean, unless I think red is terrible, I think I am.
You're kind of selling me on this card, but I want to dial in on the grades here real quick. So The card right above this is Irreverent Gremlin.
Okay.
Which is 1 and a red for a 2/2 menace. Whenever another creature you control with power 2 or less enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Do this only once each turn. You gave that a B minus. You like Piggy Bank 2 whole letter gradations higher than Irreverent Gremlin? Like, I still think you're selling me on Piggy Bank, but I still think Irreverent Gremlin is a more powerful 2-drop than Piggy Bank.
Can you tell me why?
It's going to give you continual card. It's a better aggressive card. Like, it's going to push damage better, and in aggressive decks, it's going to keep you from flooding out. Like, it smooths your draw continually while putting pressure on the opponent, whereas Piggy Bag is just some stats and 2 types, and I don't think red cares that much about the 2 types portion of the card. So I think Piggy Bank gives your opponent a lot more agency, whereas Irreverent Gremlin is just going to it takes decisions out of your opponent's hands and is going to be a better aggressive card while also helping you not flood. Like, I just think it does more for the overall outcome of the game than Piggy Bank does.
You're selling me. I'll go.
You're selling me on Piggy Bank being good, but I think it's more like B minus type good.
B minus, and then Irreverent Gremlin is a B.
Or they're both B minuses, and Irreverent Gremlin is just a better card. They're both good 2-drops.
Yeah, the thing you're selling me on, or the hook for me, was that piece of takes the agency away from your opponent. Like Irreverent Gremlin puts the agency in your hands more than Piggy Bank does.
Yeah.
All right, that takes us on to green. First up is Cautious Survivor. We talked about this already. 3 and a green for a 4/4 with survival. You gain 2 life. I gave this a 0. You gave this a 4.
Yeah, I think this card is just going to have the effect of, like the stupid saddle mount in Outlaws of Thunder Junction that was just
Mm-hmm.
large, like the beaver or
Yeah, the
whatever it
giant
was.
beaver.
Like, I just think green's going to be amazing in this format, and I think
Mm-hmm.
this card is just going to be that for green decks. Like, it's good enough. It's a
Wasn't
format
giant
of four.
beaver a zero? Like, were you ever like, I wish I had a giant beaver at the end of the draft? I don't think you did. That's how I feel about this. Like, this feels like Rush Shield Rampager to me, where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna play this in my green decks, but like, I'm never gonna care about this.
I mean, I definitely think green white cares about this card.
Really?
Green white wants to race, and this makes racing impossible for your opponent. This
Yeah,
forces your opponent into defense. They have to block it. It's going to turn on your combat tricks. It's a large body. And
I,
I think this card is well statted.
I'll give it a 1, I guess. I
I
don't.
agree. It looks like, I guess I'm trying to say that I think this card's a sleeper because I agree. It looks
Okay.
like the type of card that wouldn't matter. And I
Uh,
think this card, despite looking like that, I
Will.
think it will. Yeah.
Okay. I could see it.
Next up, we've got Moldering Gym and Weight Room. This is 2 and a green for an uncommon room. First side for Moldering Gym, 3 mana. When you unlock this door, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. The other side is Weight Room, which is 6 mana. When you unlock this door, manifest Dread, then put 3 +1/+1 counters on that creature. You give us a 2, I gave us a B-.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're giving me this look like you're not fussed about this card. I have 2 words for you, my friend. Beanstalk Giant. This card is great.
Beanstalk Giant, huh?
Yeah, it's got the 3-mana adventure, go get a
Mm-hmm.
land, and
Mm-hmm.
then large body later. What is not to like about this card?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe nothing. Plus Manifest Dread is more than just a vanilla
Manifest Red is more
body.
than just a thing. This is a land. This is going to give you an enchantment to potentially mill. If you put it in your graveyard, you can pick it back up as a permanent, maybe if that matters. It's going to be fixing for a 5 colors room deck.
Okay. B-. I'm in.
Love this card.
Great. Next up is Patchwork Beastie, single green for an artifact creature. It's a 3/3 with Delirium. If you don't have Delirium, it can't attack or block. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill a card. I gave this a responsible 2. You give us a build around B-.
Build around B-. Listen, I'm hot on green. I'm hot on Delirium decks. I think this is exactly what red-green Delirium Stompy wants. And I think it's going to be very good in green-black as well. It's 2 types when you mill it with something like, say, its name. It's artifact, which is a hard type to find good cards of, I think. I really like green, and I want to be going after building green decks, and I want to go after building Delirium decks early in the format. And I think Patchwork Beastie is all of those things. Plus, I know it's not card selection. And I think Patchwork Beastie is.
That's why you like it. It's because you keep thinking it gives you card selection.
No,
And
I refuse it. I strike that from the record. That's going to cover the podcast.
I'm gonna stick with 2. I agree. I really like maybe 2+. I like it in black, green, and red, green. I just can't imagine picking it highly as a result.
Dang it. Next up, we've got Wicker Folk Thresher. This is 4 mana for a 5/4 artifact creature at uncommon. It's got Delirium. Whenever it attacks, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you don't, put the card onto the battlefield, put it into your hand. You gave us an A, I gave us a B. We both clearly think this is a pretty good card. I want to dial into why you think it's an A. Like, this is, I think, the only uncommon you gave a straight up A to. You think this is the best uncommon in the set?
I guess if that's what I gave, if that's the only card I gave an A to, then yes, I do think it's the best uncommon in the set. I don't know. Big, 2 types, doesn't need to connect, like just gets it on attacks. Again, I think about like this feels like a must kill threat that is not that easy to kill.
Not that easy to kill, but also not that easy to have Delirium on turn 4 when this comes down on curve. I guess you also have the 5th turn.
You have the 5th turn. I'd also disagree. Like, green has someone say its name. Like, there's so many cards that are like 3/4 of Delirium enablers or thereabouts for just one shot. And like, I mean, maybe it's this card isn't great in green white, but it's gonna be great in all the other green decks, especially red green and black green, and blue green with Manifest Dread is gonna, I think, be able to, you maybe have to during
turn
draft.
on Delirium. Yeah, blue green's going to turn on Delirium and get to pick up the green Delirium cards for free.
Right. So I just think this is so strong. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's a good card. It's hard for me to like. I'm really trying to be more conscious about what I think the actual best cards in the set are, and I don't think this is one of the best uncommons.
You don't think this is going to be a top 10 uncommon?
might be a top 10, but like pack one, pick one. I think I'm taking both the blue green and the black green Signpost Uncommons that we think are great higher than this
Just
pack
because
one, pick one.
they're 2 mana.
Because they're 2 mana. Like,
But this goes in every deck.
but you got to do work. Like sometimes, and I don't want to be like Mr. Negative Nancy or like
Yeah.
whatever, but sometimes it's going to be a 4 mana 5/4. Like
That's a
more
pretty
often,
high floor. That's a pretty high floor.
it is a pretty high floor. I just like I could honestly like I could see, maybe I'm not that excited about red, but I could see first picking the black -3/-3 card over this pretty easily.
Okay. All right. I
So
mean,
I agree. Like I agree it's a good card. I just want to I'm trying to be more cognizant of what I
yeah,
truly expect the best cards in the set are.
maybe A is strong. Maybe it's more an A- or a B plus. But I do think this is going to be a top 10, top 5 uncommon in the set.
Cool.
We have a couple colorless cards to talk about. One is found
The
footage.
0 through 10 grading scale.
It really does fall apart when you get here. And I did want to shout out. So if you are following along at home, we color coded the spreadsheets for the grades, and just to see how much we love green. Like green has so many B's and A minuses and A's in the uncommon department, like way more than actually blue has a lot of B's from us. But yeah, just way more than other colors. It feels like.
Yeah, the color coding idea was genius, just for I think our sanity for trying to figure out gradation differences, but also just to quickly and easily look at the colors and see. And you kind of coded it into like stoplight colors, like green is good, red is zeros, yellow is like a 4, so yellow is a card that's like approaching green, and then there's some cooler colors for like the 1s, 2s, and 3s. Really like that feature, and that is one of the things I wanted to touch on as well, which is white looks not great grading wise, and white does look priced into trying to be aggressive in a format that I expect to be pretty slow.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so these colorless cards. One is found footage. This is 1 mana for an artifact clue. You may look at face down creatures your opponents control anytime, and you can pay 2, sack found footage, surveil 2, then draw a card. I gave this a 10, you gave this a 2, and you're saying 2 for just the 2 Delirium decks?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
That seems fair. Okay, I'm good. You didn't grade this next card.
Glimmerlight?
You put a question mark.
I put a question mark. I tapped out.
2 mana artifact equipment. When it enters, you make a 1/1 Glimmer enchantment creature token. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, and it has an equip cost of 1. I just didn't know
what number to give it. Like, I think this is going to be a fine card. It's going to be playable. It's an equipment, so I'm predisposed to like it. I think this is going to be really good in blue-white. I think that's going to be its best home.
It's also an artifact for your Delirium. Like, Delirium decks love having
Delirium decks love a random artifact. Like, maybe this is good in red-green beatdown. Also, like a short sword that's going to be an artifact.
Red-white likes it because it makes a 1/1, and then it has a short sword. I think this is just a good card. I think this is a 10.
I'm sold. That's what my initial inclination was. And I was like, no, Ethan's just going to slam me for putting a 10 on this because it's an equipment. I didn't want to put that.
Yeah, I mean, feels like it could be early golden egg contender here.
Okay, I like it. That was my gut instinct about the card. And then I just gave up putting a number on it. I do like the card, though.
Yeah. This will be our longest crash course, I do think, but I'm here for it.
Also, I think full of the best content. So who cares?
Yeah,
it's not a race to the finish.
I care in like an hour when I start editing, but I don't care right now. Should we get to our top uncommons and commons?
Please, let's do.
Okay, so in the uncommon department, we each have a list of 3 for each color. For white, my number 1 is Fear of Abduction. This is 4 white for a 5/5 enchantment creature. Has an additional cost to cast the spell. Exile a creature you control. It has flying. And when it enters, you exile target creature an opponent controls. And when it leaves the battlefield, you put each card exiled with it into its owner's hand. Card seems excellent to me. You will see I have no fear grading 5 mana and 6 mana cards highly this time around.
Well, that's a point I wanted to bring up as well, because that is something that is true of both of our lists. There are a lot of banger 5 and 6 mana plays. I just think that points to a slower format. Like, all of the Archetype Bleed stuff you're talking about, all the graveyard stuff, all the banger cards at 5 and 6 mana. I just think that's bad news for stuff like red-white that already doesn't look like a well-supported aggro deck.
And why I think you want to be skewing your green-white decks to like okay, sure, I might win the early game, but I got to also figure out when I get to the late game what happens.
Yes.
I have Sheltered by Ghosts, the aura we spent a long time arguing about as the number 2
I
white
respect it.
uncommon. And I have Orphans of the Wheat as my number 3. That's the one in a white 2/1 that can tap any number of creatures when it attacks. And it gets +1/+1 for each creature tapped that way.
I've got Fear of Abduction and Orphans of the Wheat as my number 1 and 2, similar to your list. My one that's different is number 3, Glimmer Seeker. 2 and a white for a 3/3 with survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if it's tapped, draw a card if you control a Glimmer creature. If you don't control a Glimmer creature, create a 1/1 Glimmer enchantment creature token. Just think this card's fine stats. You're always going to play it in every white deck. Also, I was just struggling to find a number 3. It probably is the aura. I think I like your take there, because I think it does look like white has to lean aggressive, and that card is going to be good in aggressive decks.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna
I kind of like your aura take.
slam the door on so many games, I think.
Yeah. Takes us on to blue. Number 1, I've got Fear Falling. 3 blue for a 4/4 flyer. When it attacks, target creature defending player controls gets -2/-0 and loses flying until your next turn. In the number 2 slot, I've got Paranormal Analyst. 1 and a blue for a 1/3. When you manifest Dread, put a card you put into your graveyard this way into your hand.
I love that card.
Broken in Manifest Dread decks. It's only blue-green, but it's going to be great there. And then in the number 3 slot, I've got Unnerving Grasp. This is 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and you manifest Dread. So Mana War that lets you manifest Dread, as it were.
Manifest, I love it. I have the same number 1 and number 2, Fear of Falling, the Flyer, Paranormal Analyst, the Manifest Dread Enabler. And then I have a removal spell in number 3, Stay Hidden, Stay Silent, 1 and a blue for an aura. When it enters, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step, and you can pay 4 blue to shuffle enchanted creature into its owner's library, then manifest Dread, activate only as a sorcery.
I like it. Moving on to Black's Uncommons. In the number 1 slot, I've got Miasma Demon. This is 4 black for a 5/4 flyer. When it enters, you may discard any number of cards. When you do, up to that many target creatures each get -2/-2 until end of turn. This, I think, is also one of the best uncommons in the set.
Agreed.
I mean, it's going to be great in white-black when you get to pitch something you want in the bin anyway, but once you're at 6 mana, you don't even necessarily care about that. But the fact that you get to play a large threat and then get a mana advantage to catch you back up after you're behind to kill your opponent's team or whatever, this card looks incredible to me.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 slot, Vile Mutilator, which is 5 black for a 6/5. As an additional cost to cast it, you sack a creature or an enchantment. It's got flying and trample, and when it ETBs, each opponent sacrifices a non-token enchantment, then sacrifices a non-token creature. Also think Vile Mutilator looks insane, and I'm hoping that the format's going to be slow enough that it's also castable too, like that it's not just a reanimate only card.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the number 3 slot, I've got Nowhere to Run, the 1 and a black flash removal spell. When it ETBs, target creature and opponent controls gets -3/-3. And creatures your opponent's control can be the target of spells and abilities as though they didn't have hexproof, and ward abilities don't trigger. Largely flavor text. It's just 2 mana flash, synergistic -3/-3, which is insane.
And I have the same 3, just in a slightly different order. I just did give a slight bump down to Vile Mutilator as being 7 mana, so I put that at number 3, the removal spell at number 2, and Miasma Demon at number 1.
But speaking of how much we like green-black and just black as a color, we saw black at the top of the Uncommon Archetype Power Rankings. These are also some incredible single-colored black uncommons as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on in red?
Well, in red, I probably need to shift because I do have Piggy Bank at number 1, but I probably like your Menace 2-drop that gives you rummaging for 2 power creatures better, but whatever. I'm going to keep my Piggy here at number 1. 1 in red for a 3/2 artifact creature. When it dies, you make a treasure. Then I have Fear of Burning Alive at number 2. 4 red for a 4/4 enchantment creature. When it enters, it deals 4 damage to each opponent, and it has Delirium. Fear of Burning Alive deals that amount of damage to target creature that player controls. So if you have Delirium, any non-combat damage that you deal to an opponent then deals that much damage to a creature. And Razorkin Hordecaller is number 3, 4 in a red for a 4/4 with haste, and whenever you attack, you make a 1/1 red gremlin creature token.
Aimer.
Yeah, Aimer, it's back.
I have similars. I Fear Burning Alive and Razorkin Herdcaller at numbers 1 and 2, respectively. And then on number 3 slot, I have my Irreverent Gremlin.
Yeah.
The 1 in a red, 2/2 Menace guy.
I like that. Moving on to green, I have Wicker Folk Thresher. That's the 3 in a green, 5/4 artifact creature with Delirium. When it attacks, if there are 4 more card types, Look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it onto the battlefield. If you don't put the card on the battlefield, you put it into your hand. Number 2, Under the Skin, 2 and a green sorcery, Manifest Dread. You may return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. And number 3, Threats Around Every Corner, 3 and a green enchantment. When it enters, you manifest Dread, and whenever a face-down permanent you control enters, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle.
Yeah, I've got those same 3 in a different order. I've got Threats number 1, Under the Skin number 2, and Wickerfolk Thrasher number 3. Threats Around Every Corner looks like it is. I think that might be the card I graded the highest. That wasn't a gold card. It's so good in blue-green. So good.
Well, and just makes you want to do blue-green or green soup or what, like it's a real pull in the spirit of the B's and the A's. It's a pull into doing something hard.
Yes.
So for better or worse, but it feels like for better, like that's, I think 12 or 13 of those 15 cards that we put on a list that we have overlap. So I do feel like the number scale, we're perhaps a sort of, echo chamber of thoughts on this show. But there have been times where we don't have nearly as much overlap. And I do think that perhaps if we're onto something with these evaluations, that the number scale really did help us distill down like, okay, but what cards do we think matter? Because we largely came to the same conclusions.
Yeah, I think that is true. And well, also could just be a nod to maybe we got lucky and they're just clearly powerful cards at uncommon in this set. I mean, that might be part of it as well.
I don't know. We do this set review another time and I'm not grading 6 and 7 drops as top uncommons, because of my my issues. Okay, that brings us on to our list of 10 notable commons where there is significantly less overlap. Would you like to go first, sir?
Sure, I would love to go first. So let's start with the cards that we have overlap on.
Also, your list is 12.
Well, this is 12. I figured if we're doing notable commons, what's the difference? We want this to foster meaningful discussion, right?
There are also rules. I also want this to follow rules. But go ahead.
10 such an arbitrary number. There were 12 notable commons and exactly 2 sleepers. Those were the rules this time around. So the ones we have overlap on, Say Its Name. This is, and I think maybe last week I was kind of a downer on this card, but this card's stonks have gone up and up and up the more I've thought about the set. It's 1 and a green sorcery, mill 3. You may return a creature or a land card from your graveyard to your hand. Exile this card and 2 other cards named Say Its Name to go search up Altenac the Thrice Called, which is also another busted green uncommon. Mm-hmm. But mostly you care about this being like a ton of progress towards Delirium, plus card selection, plus hand smoothing. This is going to be every bit as good as Malevolent Rumble and
Cash Grab.
Whatchamacallit. Yeah, Cash Grab have been the last 2 sets. Mm-hmm. Next card we have overlap on is Spineseeker Centipede. This is 2 and a green for a 2/1. When an ETB, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Why? Like, green just gets absurd cards. Why does green also get this?
I don't know.
And then it's got Delirium, as if that weren't good enough. 3 mana, 2/1, Civic Wayfinder. It gets +1/+2 and has vigilance as long as there are 4 or more card types in your graveyard, which means it turns into a 3/3, a 3 mana 3/3 that goes and gets a land. Like, this card is dumb.
This card's excellent. Yep.
Green is pushed. Another card we have overlap on. A good thing I put 12 cards on here because these cards wouldn't have made my list otherwise, and we would have had even less overlap.
Which is a good thing, I guess.
The next 2 cards are Trapped in the Screen, 2 and a white enchantment, Ward 2. When this enters, exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment an opponent controls until Trapped in the Screen leaves the battlefield. I think one benefit of this card that isn't obvious, because normally we're downish on this type of effect, maybe.
You are downish on this type of effect.
Okay, downish, sure. I won't lump you in with it. It's got Ward, but I also think another reason that we're going to be talking about liking this card next week is it doesn't send the thing that you kill to the graveyard.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, going to be relevant in this format.
I totally agree.
To not up your opponent's delirium count.
Everyone's always talking about but there's so much incidental artifact and enchantment hate. There are modal cards that blow up artifact and enchantments. They're not good cards. It's like
they're not good cards.
It's like 3 mana, kill an artifact, kill an enchantment, or manifest dread. None of those modes are good cards. So you can put them in your deck, but it's not like there's just reclamation sages running around or whatever.
Correct. The best one, actually, just now that you're saying that, is I'm kind of high on the. I already liked the card, but the uncommon, the green uncommon that like does something to enchantment, and then you shuffle 4 cards from your graveyard in your library. That one only
Oh
costs
yeah,
2 mana.
yeah.
That card seems like it'll be excellent, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But this has ward and not sending anything to the graveyard is relevant. And then unsettling twins, we also have overlap on, which is 3 and a white for a 2/2 when it enters Manifest Dread. Just
Yep.
clean bread and butter, going to be great in the white decks. Okay, so on to the cards that we don't have overlap on, which is a significant amount. Unable to Scream, that's my blue removal spell that I love. The blue
Mm-hmm.
Swords to Plowshares, blue turns something into an 0/2 and makes it lose all abilities. Glimmer Burst, 3 and a blue for the instant, draw 2 cards, make a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment creature token. Scorching Dragonfire didn't make your
Oh
list?
no, that's overlap. That's bad. That's bad highlighting work on my part.
Okay, so Scorching Dragonfire, it just appeared randomly out of nowhere, and
Yeah.
also is overlap on both of
Yes.
our lists. I was shocked when I stumbled onto that one. You said you didn't have it on your list.
My bad.
Scorching
My bad.
Dragonfire, 1 in a red, deal 3. If the creature would die, it gets exiled instead, which is also going to be insanely relevant text as we're trying to make progress towards Delirium. So it's going to be even better than it would be normally, which is excellent. Monstrous Emergence, next for me, 1 in a green for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, choose a creature you control or reveal a creature card from your hand. Monstrous Emergence deals damage equal to the power of the creature you chose or the card you revealed to target creature. This is sorcery speed murder for 2 mana, basically, in green decks. Like, you're going to have creatures running around everywhere. This gets around the have to have a creature on board. Like, I don't understand why green, in addition to getting all these other banger commons, gets this absolutely premium removal spell as
Yeah.
well. This card's going to be great. Green's going to be great. You heard it here first, folks. Next up is Moldering Gym Weight Room for me. Wait, is that an uncommon? That's a common? That card. Why does green get all of this? Oh my god. It's a common, folks. Moldering Gym Weight Room. You just get Beanstalk Giant at common, apparently, now in green decks. So that's the card that lets you search up a land, and then for 6 mana, you can manifest Dread and put 3+1/+1 counters on the creature. I've also got Boiler Bilge's Ripper. This is one we haven't talked about yet. This is 4 and a red for a 4/4 common. When it enters, you may sacrifice another creature or enchantment. When you do, Boiler Bilge's Ripper deals 2 damage to any target.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me to evaluate. I like it. I obviously think it's going to be excellent in red black. Less clear about its applications elsewhere.
I agree, but I think it's going to be good enough in red black that I think it's going to be good. So maybe it should be a sleeper common, but I like that card. The green cards just keep coming, folks. Next on this list for me is Manifest Dread, 1 in a green sorcery with the text Manifest Dread. But this gets you 50% of the way to Delirium in a single card as your 2-drop. That card is also incredible, and it's a different type, a unique type, while also filling out your creature slot.
Mm-hmm.
That card's insane. And then lastly for me, Winter's Intervention, 1 in a black instant, deals 2 damage to target creature, you gain 2 life. I didn't want to miss on the savor of the format.
But this is not savor. Because the thing we missed on, we did the reason we didn't do savor, the reason we missed savor for a couple weeks was because we thought it's deal 2. But savor is -2/-2, which is a big difference to deal 2.
Yeah, and
Savor being a combat
a lot of the really good Signpost 2-drops are 2/3s.
I'm not. I almost gave Winter's Intervention a 0 in grading.
Whoa.
But then I was like, again, like, don't let good be the enemy of great. Like, this is still probably fine and as a 4. But like, I could see this not mattering.
That's hard for me to buy into.
Yeah. I said I didn't. Anything I mean, so the clear takeaway for you is that half your list is green.
Green is insane. How could it not be? I mean, I guess it's not for you, but like, green is deep at common and uncommon and gets the best signposts. Green and black look really strong to me going into the format.
I am going to preemptively make a swap here, which is I like you're selling me enough on Unable to Scream, the blue enchantment 0/2, that I'm going to replace a blue card on my list with that, which will bring us up actually to six overlapping
6
cards.
of 12.
Well, 6 of 12, 6 of 10 for those of us who followed the rules. So my 4 that we haven't talked about yet, I have 2 colorless cards on my list. I have Glimmerlight, the 2 mana equipment. Make a 1/1 glimmer, equip creature gets +1/+1, equip cost of 1. I do. That's
Welcome to
my
Team Equipment.
early take for Gold Nebula format. I put Terramorphic Expanse on my list, which is the land tap, sack, search for a basic land, put on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. I think like free, like a difficult, I guess not difficult with Manifest Dread, but other than that, difficult type to get in the bin for Delirium. Your like 2-color decks love to fix their mana. I think there's going to be a lot of Archetype Bleed overlap. I think Terramorphic Expanse is going to matter in the format.
That's a good shout. That should be in my list and should be an overlap card. I love everything you just said there.
It's great. Just make your list 13 and you can have it on there. It'll be fine. And then I have 2 black cards on my list.
13 perfect. Unlucky.
There you
Friday
go.
the 13th, we got it. That's what we should have done. We just missed it. 13 commons.
That's right. Friday the 13th was just 2 days ago also.
It was.
I have Innocuous Rat on my list. 1 out of black for a 1/1. When it dies, Manifest Dread. And Fear of Lost Teeth, single black for a 1/1 enchantment creature. When it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target and you gain 1 life.
Yeah, so you're hot on the black, I'm hot on the green. We're both hot on black and green.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, like, you know, if my list was 12, I'd probably make room for your green cards. I did, but some of those I didn't see. All like Moldering Gym Weight Room, I just didn't see like as Beanstalk Giant in grading it. And I thought like you're selling me. I do think that card is going to be pretty dang good.
But yeah, round things out with a couple sleeper commons.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I have 2 more cards just to shout out, and maybe there are more than this. I was pretty late at night when I was perusing through the spoiler. First one is Possessed Goat, white for a 1/1, and it has 3 discard a card, put 3+1/+1 counters on Possessed Goat, and it becomes a black demon in addition to its other colors and types. Clearly only going in black-white, so you don't need to pick it highly, but I think it is going to be a bread and butter type card for the black-white deck. And then Twist Reality as well. This card, I think, maybe could be pushing the top common list. 1 movement for an instant, choose 1, counter target spell, or Manifest Dread. This is 50% of the way towards Delirium. Again, the blue-green deck really wants to Manifest Dread, so I think you are going to be okay enough with this for paying 3 mana to Manifest Dread in blue-green, because so much of the time that's going to be 2/2 draw a card, or 2/2 draw a card, get a land, or whatever. And then if you're into 3 mana Manifest Dread at instant speed, counter target spell tacked onto that all of a sudden becomes much more appealing. I think this card's going to be really good in blue-green.
I do not co-sign either of these sleepers, but I'm happy for the content.
Okay, great. Any parting thoughts before we go here?
I think
the number system was a smashing success.
I think for the first crack, you know, obviously we welcome feedback, but my personal take in terms of like my journey of evaluating cards and having like fruitful discussions with you, I feel like I want to build upon this system and not go back. That's my take right now.
Yes, and like to be clear, I think about it because I feel responsible for this.
You should.
Not trying to change the limited community's grading scale. Like if you like this, great, come on the journey with us. If you don't like it, continue to use the LR grading scale. That grading scale has stood the test of time. It is excellent, tried and true, especially as you're starting out on your card evaluation journey or whatever. Like this is an advanced card evaluation grading system, not for the faint of heart. Like it took me significantly longer to grade cards this time around, but I think it made me think a lot more. But if you find it helpful, great. Like try to think about it with us. Think about what decks you think stuff's going to go in. So I think I like it for the podcast, for us, for fostering discussion for stuff like this.
And I'm still extremely, like, even after diving into the set more, really pouring over the commons and uncommons, I'm still pretty darn excited. It doesn't like, this feels like it's going to end 2024 with a bang, where I feel like the rest of the sets mostly fell flat for me.
Yeah, I am excited to play with the set, and you'll be able to watch both of us. Thank you to Wizards for our early access on Wednesday. So a couple days after this episode comes out, you can check out the streamer early access event, and both of us will be playing there. Thank you to Wizards of the Coast for hooking us up with that access.
Yeah, gonna be awesome.
All right, great place to wrap us up. Thank you, as always, to Salty Pretzels for our intro and outro music. Make sure you give it a listen.
You can find all of our content on our website at lordsoflimited.com. Ben, are you going to be getting us a little tier list? A little tier list up there?
Oh no. I will be getting us a tier list up there. There will be a tier list available. Complete A through F grading scale if you like grading cards that way.
So we'll have a tier list up there. Our whole backlog of tier lists is there, but people want the new sets. We'll have that. We've got our episode backlog as well. We've got our YouTube channel links, Twitch channel, our TeePublic merch, our Patreon page, all that stuff available at lordsoflimited.com.
If you've got any feedback about the show or any questions, shoot us an email at lordsoflimited@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Lords of Limited.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.